All right, we're going to do a quick introduction. So we're just going to go around. We'll start here with John.
Hi, I'm John. Hi, John. I was actually talking to somebody over here. It is like next week will be my 1-year Hello World anniversary in coding, so I'm very excited about that. So self-taught in development over kind of last summer, early fall, and started my job at Ally Financial last November, and been there for about 6 months now. I'm loving it. Also have 4 kids and a wonderful wife who are on their way back from Florida as I speak. So, awesome.
Next.
Yo, I am Terrence Whittaker Jr. Hey, that felt like a very James Bond-ish voice. I am a developer at Union. Been coding for just over 2 years now. Got my start back in 2016. Completed the Tech Talent South program, their code immersion program. Double back, did their JavaScript application development course. So I'm a big fan of Tech Talent South and everything that it has offered me throughout my journey. But since then, worked a couple different jobs, and continued to grow. Now I'm at Union and absolutely loving it.
Awesome. I'm Scott Lundgren. I've been in Charlotte for about 14 years. I've been a developer for almost 20 years now. Now I'm in the role of DevOps, so I've moved from being developer to the systems administration, mostly cloud infrastructure design. Taught for Tech Talent South 2 different times. I've been involved in about different startups here in Charlotte that have failed. Now on to another one. So trying. So I'm glad y'all are here. Oh yeah, and I'm on the board for Code for Charlotte. I'm sure I will sneak some plugs in for us through the talk.
Excellent. I'm Pinkie. Real name is Rachel, but everybody calls me Pinkie. And I am Application Development Practice Manager at Cardinal Solutions Group, which is a consulting firm in Charlotte. I've been there 10 years. I've been coding for about 20 years. Yeah. So been doing this for a long time, and I've made lots of changes throughout my career. I started out as a web developer before there was jQuery. It was awful, so I decided to become a C# developer. Did a bunch of .NET for a while. Switched to Java. Switched to mobile. Now I'm switched to DevOps. So over those years, I've done a little bit of everything. So it's pretty exciting. I also am career development director for Chick Tech Charlotte, which is it's a new organization in Charlotte. It's a local chapter of a national organization focused on attracting and empowering women and girls to get into and stay in technology. So if you haven't seen our meetups, we're starting to partner, starting to get out there, and we'll have a high school program coming up again in the fall. We just did one in April. It was a huge success. We just helped us out with, and so we're excited for that.
Okay, I feel terrible.
Sorry, just 1 second. You guys look super cozy on the couch, but if you'd like to spread out a little bit, I can move over to another chair. Did you guys spread out? You all comfortable?
I'm cool.
We're all friends. Okay, sorry.
Safety in numbers.
I know. No one will find me out.
Yeah.
Right, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. So my name is Victoria Pinson. I'm actually pretty new to Charlotte in general. I moved here in January and pretty much immediately started Tech Talent South, I think like 8 days after I moved here. I took the code immersion class and then I jumped into JavaScript. Now I am actually the co-founder, there's my other co-founder right there, for Ryfox. We are a creative agency, we're boutique, if you will. We do branding, tactical marketing, a lot of web development as well. And then also process kind of automation and things that a lot of small businesses need, helping them get a bigger bang for their buck, so to speak, and helping them find ways to invest in marketing by streamlining other areas. So that's kind of what we do there. When I'm not doing that, I volunteer at a lot of stuff, so you've probably seen my name, especially with Charlotte Devs. you know, I think this is an awesome organization. I've done a little bit with Chick Tech, with Girls Who Code, with, you know, a couple others. Not you guys, but you guys are awesome. Come on in here. So yeah, I know I'm super pumped to be here, but, you know, after here in 20 years and I'm at like 6 months, that's like, whew. You belong here. Go ahead.
Well, my name is Alan Chavez. I am originally from Mexico. I moved to the United States about 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago. I went to the University of Texas for college, and I stayed in Texas for a few months after college, and then I moved to North Carolina. A local company relocated me here, Red Ventures. I'm pretty sure if you've been here long enough, you've heard about them. So I worked for them for a while, and then after Red Ventures, I joined a startup, and the startup did really well. We were actually hired by Uber. I didn't join Uber, and this was way before Uber scandals. Like the biggest thing that I decided to not join for Uber is because all of my other coworkers who got an offer at Uber, they got $50,000 more than I did for the exact same position, and I was the only Hispanic in the team. So, and it's like, this is not the kind of company. Yes. Yes. And I said, like, this is the kind of company that I don't want to work for. And then a year later, Uber scandals all over the place. So it didn't surprise me either. So I've been here. I've been jumping around for a few, like trying to find like my place. But I've been at Schoolcom, which is an amazing company, and now I'm working. I've been at Bank of America. Now I'm working with Scott, actually, who worked in the same company. So it's another startup, and I've been liking it so far. And I mean, technically speaking, I've been doing development professionally. I started doing freelancing when I was about 17 years old. So professionally, it's about 10, 11 years. But I started like, I don't know, the age. So this is kind of like, I really like it.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Justin Holt. I'm a front-end developer at Ray Ward, which is the largest advertising agency here in Charlotte. They've been around 40 years. I also have been around 40 years. Like Scott, I've got lots of gray in my beard here, so I've been doing development for over 20 years. I had to, actually in prep for this, I looked back on the Wayback Machine to see like what the first like thing that I could find that I did, and it was in 1995, written in tables. Some of it's still out there. So, and I've done so much stuff in web. I've worked for every like .com thing you could think of. I survived that whole, like barely, level. I've worked for e-retailers, for agencies. I've done tons of freelance work on my own, and I'm really happy at Ray Ward now. There's like 100+ people there. It's full service, so we do everything from print to video to PR. Lots of just everything you can think of marketing. So I get to, you know, both be a part of huge campaigns and stuff, but also get a little bit more experience in all kinds of other stuff. I was born here in Charlotte, grew up about an hour east of here out in the country. Yeah, totally. Yep. And I live with my wife and my son over outside of Pleasant Midwood.
Also delicious barbecue.
Yes.
Yep.
That's an amazing barbecue.
I'm the barbecue guy. Yeah. I started a barbecue competition team with my brother last year. Our late father was a pit master, and so we kind of wanted to remember him and spend time with each other. He's a single dad now, so you know when you get older, you don't get to spend time with your siblings as much. So that's kind of our thing, Old Brothers Barbecue. Which kind of drives my wife crazy a little bit. You balance it out. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the intros. For those of you that I haven't met, I'm Josh. I've been in Charlotte for about 15 years now, 14 years now. I came here to help found a startup. We sold that startup off in about 2011, sort of migrated with that over to a company called Ecolab. We purchased that, did that for a few years, went to NASCAR and worked at NASCAR helping manage that website for a few years, and then recently joined Skookum, so I've been there for a couple of years now. My role there is Director of Co-Production, which means almost nothing to any of you. But basically, I'm a people manager, right? So I've sort of stopped writing code, or they politely asked me to stop writing code. And now I manage people, right? So I help them find the next thing that's right for them. I help mentor people, help them in their career progression, and generally irritate them. You can ask Carlos there in the back how that generally goes. But so that's sort of my role at Skookum. entirely unqualified to be up here today in this position. I originally started in fine arts, so my background is in bronze and wood and metal sculpture. Then I did a stint as a graphic designer until one day somebody asked, can you build a website? And I raised my hand, even though I'd never done it before. And that's how I started my career in technology, was just from taking a sort of a leap of faith in myself. I know what it is to be an imposter, right? So I work around a lot of talented and intelligent people who have computer science degrees and who are 100 times smarter than me and have been doing this for a long time. And then I have to tell them what to do, right? And that's not always the most comforting feeling, knowing that everybody around you, knowing that everybody around you is smarter than you and better than you at their job, right? So that's my qualification for being here today, I guess. So not totally unqualified. We're going to do an icebreaker. How many people are aware that the World Cup is going on right now? Yeah? Anybody heard of the team Iceland? Or the country Iceland? So they have this great chant that they do, and everybody in the audience at some point, they start making this really deep ooh sound, right? So we're going to do that today. But we're going to do hooga, right? So 1, 3, okay, everybody together. 1, 2, 3, hooga! One more time. 1, 2, 3, hooga! All right, everybody got their voice working? All right? Okay. We're going to do some audience yeah, we didn't do the clap, sorry. We didn't do that. So, imposter syndrome. We all want to know what it is, what it's about, what our opinions of it are. But the most important thing here is, what do you all think, right? So we're going to start this up with some audience questions. So anybody out here want to break the ice with the first question for the day, now that you've given your Viking chant? Anyone? I'm going to point at somebody in a second, so somebody raise their hand.
Just anything that you're hoping to get out of today,
Yeah.
like any answer or any questions that you hoped to get answered.
Yes?
I think after speaking to a couple people here, it's pretty relevant, especially for people who are hopping into programming and development from another profession. And you usually have that awkward period where all of a sudden you're talking to recruiters and you're looking for a job and people are taking you seriously for something you've done for 6 months, while you've spent years doing something else and struggled to make your way through. So I guess from your individual experiences, how you've managed to sort of cope with that emotionally and psychologically, and then how it translates to when you actually start working somewhere.
Okay, that's a fantastic question. So just to summarize that quickly, I'm sure you'll summarize it in your heads, but for those who are making a transition from one career into another, and you're out in the job world trying to make this transition, how do you go into a job interview and be taken seriously for the first time? Who wants to kick us off here? Go for it.
So as a hiring manager, I'd like to give this perspective because I see it a lot, and I see how other hiring managers and recruiters don't value the experience that you have before coding, right? So if you've got 5 or 10 or 20 years of experience in something else, that's valuable. You have more experience than a college graduate who has 0 working experience, right? So that's valuable. Make sure to highlight that and how it relates to your coding, what you're doing in coding as it relates to, I've had to pivot my own career a couple of times within that time frame and learn new things. And so as a hiring manager, I might ask you, why should I trust you in this 6 months experience? And you can come back and say, you know what, I've worked in an office, I've worked with people, I know how to work on teams, I know how to collaborate with people. And so it's really important to highlight that, because that's something that gets missed when hiring managers or recruiters are talking to people who are transitioning careers. And I've experienced that a little bit as I've transitioned technologies, because yeah, you've written web pages, but why should I trust you as a mobile developer? That was a hard transition. It's like, no, I know how to do this. It's not like I've had to learn how to learn, so you should trust me that I know how to learn quickly. And moving into DevOps, it's been the same thing, right? How do you get people how do you build that trust? You just have to show the value of the other things that you're bringing in.
Just to quickly piggyback on you, I think one of the tactics that you can use when you're going through this process, and I speak from a recruiting background in IT recruiting, and then also as somebody who's currently going through this, Don't underestimate your soft skills, but also don't make that the cornerstone of everything. Everything that you talk about should be directly related to how it gives you an edge, right? So if you're going to talk about collaboration, talk about it in the context of development. If you're going to talk about being really good at getting critique and constructive criticism, talk about it in the context of development. How did it help you in your journey?
For me, this is a second career for me. So I got my start in marketing, brand strategy, and design. Did that for 6 or 7 years. That's what I got my degree in. I grew up thinking that that's the career that I was going to be in for the rest of my life. I had these large dreams of being the suit and tie wearing advertising exec with a corner office, very specific goals. But you know, it came to a time where things change, life changes, so many different situations happen to where it kind of led me to thinking I need to take more control of my career, and that's what led me to development. Switching careers for me and going out into the job field, especially coming from a boot camp background, it was scary. Honestly, because I had just invested my last dollars really to go into a boot camp and really take that investment in myself. But something that I learned going into the job market is that yes, your past experience does matter, and you have to know how to sell yourself first and foremost. Like all the things that you've done in the past, it's not just gonna leave when you start a new job in development. You still have those team skills, you still have those soft skills, but what you have to also keep in mind is that when you're going for those junior level jobs, they're not looking for you to come in and be the best developer in the world. They know that you don't know shit. Excuse my language, I'll probably frequently curse. But they'll know and understand that you don't know much, but the things that you do know how to sell it, know how to be passionate about it, and be honest about your willingness and desire to learn. Because once anyone can come in and be like, all right, yeah, I know how to, do a for loop, I know this, I know the basics about code, but what else can you give me to let me know that you're going to continue to work, continue to strive to be better every day? So that's one of the most important things that I learned when actually going for my first job. Just continue to be passionate and let that shine more than anything.
From my background, I am from a traditional background, so I went to college, studied computer science, engineering, and all that stuff. So now that I have experience, sometimes I feel like I missed out on having another career. I really like to see people or coworkers that are coming from quote unquote traditional backgrounds, because I do believe that gives them an edge over myself, even though they might not have a networking class that I don't remember anything of. So, and I mean, if you're coming from that background, whatever background that is, that it's not a technical background, but a computer science background, I honestly believe that gives you an edge. Because at the end of the day, whenever I meet people, they're always have a lot of ideas and they have a lot of intrinsic knowledge about other fields and other domains. And I kind of feel a bit, ashamed because all I know is technology, right? I can't talk much about any particular industry because I don't have that experience, whereas other people who move into technology and they're they know so much about so many other things, and it's this guy, that's valuable as well, just like Pinkie was saying, that brings a lot of value to the table.
So yeah, the last little thing is to kind of reiterate what Rachel was saying. So I think back to, I come also from a traditional background. I got computer science at Vanderbilt. Because I had failed electrical engineering. I tried. I'm old enough that we weren't sure, when I was entering college, of this computer thing seems like it's going to be something, but it wasn't quite sure of whether software was going to eat the world or whether hardware was going to eat the world. So like an idiot, I thought I'll just get a double major in both. Clearly the brain did not understand one of those, so thankfully software ate the world. But I think back to the conversations I had with my friends that were English majors, and we lived in this kind of unique dorm, so I'd be up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I'd be wandering around the halls, and they'd be working on papers, and they're like, how do you do this thing of programming? It wasn't a reverence, but it was just a general awe of programming. How do you do this? it's the same way that you write a paper. And this is the argument you have to make in the interview of what Rachel was saying, is that, in writing an English paper, you begin, your opening paragraph is a thesis statement. Well, that's my output. And then all the paragraphs that you build to make a cohesive statement, to lead the reader back to that opening thesis statement, are my subroutines. So it's the same structure, I'm just putting it in different ways, and how I'm expressing it is a little more cryptic looking language that doesn't flow as easily when read out loud. But yeah, that's essentially kind of the kinds of things that, because when I started programming, my very first programming job was a work-study job that was building web pages for the hospital that the university had. And my other job, I have 2 jobs, that's a statistical anomaly I am. I've had 2 jobs in my life. I am qualified to put oil on your back as a lifeguard or write you a program. So that first job was like, here's this passionate thing I've been screwing around and doing on the side. And I'm like, okay, well, clearly you know how to build some HTML, so here's this work study job. And then from that work study job, I'd had 1 semester of C programming that I was able to get hired for Horry Telephone Cooperative. Does anybody know where Horry County is? Horry County, South Carolina? It's the home of Myrtle Beach. And that's where, that was my first programming gig, was writing C for CGI programs. But I was also working help desk, and that is an amazing thing to hear someone with a deep Southern accent at 60 years old to call you and tell you their internet is broke. And it's your job to figure out what went wrong. Yeah, just all those transitions of having compassion for people and wanting to solve their problems, whatever that domain, that programming language or industry takes you into. I think those are amazing topics and like qualities to shine forth. And don't be afraid of that, of whether that comes from a different background.
Being able to have technical conversations with people who don't have technical language is huge, game changer.
It makes you more fun at parties.
Makes you a better consultant, makes you a better team player. I mean, there's
Makes
so
you
many
more fun
things
at
about
parties.
that.
Clearly, we're all such big partiers in here.
I'd say if there was one underlying theme for this group, that's what it is. Fun at parties.
Yeah.
I think I got imposter syndrome just listening to him explain imposter syndrome. So like I said last year, that's the position that I was in, making a career change at 31 at that point. Yeah, 31 years old. And so my background, I have a marketing degree as my undergrad, but I actually did music in church for about 10 years after that. Yeah, and so very, very big shift of gears, career change for me. And just a little bit into my background. So going into last summer, I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I was wanting to get her into just some different summer stuff. I was like, hey, you should do some of this coding stuff. And I was like, well, I'll learn a little bit with you, sure. So I started pre-code camp and really liked it a lot and whatever. And actually, I think it was in September or October last year, went and had lunch with this guy, Josh, and said, hey, I could see actually doing this like as a job. This is really neat. What do you think? He said, go for it. I said, no way, I can't. I'm not a hipster. Like, I'm not cool enough to do this. So I sent out some resumes, and actually the first job that I got an interview for, I got hired at, which was really neat. And I really felt that going into it for sure. Like, I don't have any experience in this. And I'll tell you another thing: if you're doing the whole interview deal, okay, if you're supposed to go in a suit and tie, practice coding in front of people in a suit and tie at some point. Super awkward. I had never done that. Like, seriously, I never sat down in front of a computer and coded with like a suit and tie on. I felt like I was going to pass out. I was so nervous. It was the worst. And I walked out of that interview feeling like I kind of bombed it, honestly, because there were some questions they asked I didn't know. But I think, again, just kind of showing that, hey, I have a drive. I love solving problems. I like working with people. Put that kind of stuff forward, because it's true, that kind of stuff does matter. And you can have people who are like fantastic programmers, know all this stuff, but maybe isn't a very good person to have on a team. It doesn't work well with other people. Looking for a junior role, you might take someone who's willing to learn and who's good at working with other people over something like that.
I think my experience is a little different just because I've never really switched careers aside from I get a little bored sometimes, and I've done all kinds of just side jobs. I've delivered pizza, worked on a boat for a while, doing fishing stuff, just because it was something that I was like, hey, kind of sick of doing freelance stuff for a little bit. I'm gonna ease back on that and do something different. I'm doing the barbecue thing now, you know. I've done all kinds of stuff like that. So what I have found though is that every place that I've ever interviewed has appreciated all of that side stuff. I still to this day put that I'm an Eagle Scout on anything just because people want to ask, hey, that's cool. Why did you put that on your resume? And I'm like, because I had like tremendous leadership skills, a lot of perseverance, and it taught me a lot of qualities just to be a good human and work with other humans like that. And you'll find that employers will appreciate that kind of stuff. Just they want good people working. And if they don't, then it's not the kind of place you want to be working. Because it's just going to be toxic. So find that our employers that want cookie cutter, full stack developers, and they don't want headphones on and it's all just getting slack. And if that's your job, then yeah, you totally work there. Like me, that's just like I'd be like, hey, okay, let me go out of my car for a minute and then.
Going to the bathroom.
So yeah, I would just say fill out where you're at for interviews, and you can kind of judge based on the right questions to ask at the beginning or maybe before you get there if that kind of stuff's relevant.
I think a really important angle to remember is that more than half of what we do as software engineers has nothing to do with writing code. Like, how many of you actually sit down and write code for 8 hours a day? Right? Yeah.
7 hours on Google, 1 hour on
12? Okay. Well, depending on where you work. So maybe if you work at a startup, you're working 8 hours of code a day, but then you're doing 3 or 4 hours of something else, right? And so those of us who come from a non-traditional background, you bring more to those sorts of scenarios, right? So software engineering in today's age is a team activity, right? When you create something by yourself, it's a direct reflection of you and your capability. When we create things as a team, it's a reflection on all of us together and how we interact with one another. And everybody having a different perspective and coming from a different background and having a different look on their industry makes for a stronger team, and it makes for a more diverse team. So the thing that you should highlight when you go into those situations, if you come in with only 6 months of coding experience, is, I have 20 years of being a human, right? And here are the other things that I bring with me, that I bring to this team. And again, make the point, half of what we do has nothing to do with writing code. Here are the things that aren't related to writing code that I also bring to the table.
I also want to make a quick, sidebar here. Humans are really bad at making hiring decisions, in general. So, keep in mind that the people that you're interviewing with are not necessarily going to be, way experts on, predicting whether or not you're going to be successful. So, if you kind of take ownership of that sort of conversation and you take back a little bit of that power in that conversation and say, no, this is why I feel this is an educated move for me, and this is what I think you guys are going to get out of it. I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, and interviewing is hard.
It is.
Straight up, being the interviewer, as soon as you get into that scenario and start interviewing people and having a judge, is a whiteboard method the way? Is sending you home and write code? Is looking at your GitHub? Is making you talk through how you might implement something? So interviewing is hard. That's an art. Anyone here who's done it, it's a total art form. And there are a lot of people who are really bad at it. So take that with a grain of salt. The interviewer is oftentimes in just as much of an imposter scenario as you are. And he or she is being put in that scenario to judge.
And you're like, why am I here making
so
this
people,
so much pressure?
Based on what? What criteria do I get? So keep that in mind too.
So don't assume that the person you're interviewing with is always the expert.
Yeah.
That's a great point. So I've got sort of a canned question for you all. We didn't really start with this, but what is imposter syndrome? So that's what we're here to talk about today. John, what is your opinion? What is imposter syndrome?
Feeling like you are not qualified to be doing what you're doing or what you aspire to do. Yeah, and I think my worst moment of it so far was first couple days on the job last November. the acronyms. The acronyms right and left, like just coming at you like crazy. Oh, the XYZ to them, blah, 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 blah. Like, oh, it's the worst. So acronyms make for
You need a professional
hard
translator.
Yeah.
Translate for
Hardcore
developers.
imposters.
Anybody have a different take on that?
What I think is similar, like it's more like having the feeling that you're not qualified to do something despite you being qualified to do something. So in my case, like I've been doing development for 10 years and sometimes I feel like I'm not qualified to do what I'm doing. So to me that's imposter syndrome and sometimes it stems, and actually like, I'm going to steal this from you, Scott, but it stems from perfectionism. So that's, and something that I've said, like it never goes away. So it's something that you have to learn to cope with and to learn to push past that. Like in my career, like recently, I was with like some people under me, and to me it was like really difficult to have like a 50-year-old reporting to me. Like, you've been doing this when I was in kindergarten. Like you started doing this. Like I don't feel qualified to tell you what to do. So it just never goes away. But then it helps to think that you are in that position for a reason. Maybe because I have better communication skills, or maybe because this person doesn't want to be a manager and I do. They gave me that opportunity. So sometimes having those thoughts in the back of your head helps you to cope with the feeling of not belonging to where you are.
I think for me too, it oftentimes is that one question that kind of loops, and it's like, what happens when they figure out that I'm not as good as they say I am, right? And it's that, what happens? What happens? And I found through working through this personally, is that it's rooted in some kind of really big fear, right? And it's getting fired, or like being told you're not worthy, or you're not good enough, or you're not as special as we thought you were, or whatever the case may be. And that was very, very, very paralyzing for a long time. And I think honestly, the thing that helped me get past that was having my worst fear literally come true. Like getting hit with that 2x4, like in the face. Getting knocked on my back. I got fired from a job that I hated, to be fair, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me. But in that moment, it was like, oh my gosh, it finally happened. They finally figured out that I'm not legitimate. Like, I'm not who I say I am or whatever. So in retrospect, I honestly am so thankful that happened, because I got there and it happened. It's like getting punched in the face. Like if you've ever done like Muay Thai or like any kind of like martial arts, that's kind of what it feels like. You're like, that first time someone hits you, even not hard, you're like, oh, it like stuns you. And then you realize, okay, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. It sucked, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be.
For me, imposter syndrome, I think a lot of it is rooted in anxiety. Like you can be this high achieving individual who has performed well, know so much about what you're doing, the ins and outs, and still have that constant worry that, man, I'm not as good as my peers, or I'm not as good as these superstar coders that I follow on Twitter, or like, this is a perfect example for me, because sometimes, I'm currently what they call a mid-level developer, and even interviewing for a position as mid-level developer, it freaked me out, because it was like, all right, I don't have this crutch of being a junior anymore, where it's like, all right, I understand that they'll make mistakes, and I understand that they're not supposed to know certain things. So for me, it's just like, oh my God, I have this weight on my shoulder now. But I think, like for me, I'm always reading and always attempting to learn, and I follow people on Twitter and see code snippets of ways that they think or do things or react, and I was like, I never would have thought of that. I'm gonna fail. I'm never gonna be a great developer, and you just go into this crazy spiral. But then it's like sometimes I gotta kind of take a step back and take a breath and be like, look, it's a journey, and you gotta take things step by step. Everyone learns at different paces, and I'm here for a reason. So that's kind of what imposter syndrome has been to me, and it's something that I don't think it's ever going to go away because there's always going to be developers who know so much more than you. I mean, we work in this field where there's a million different directions you can go, a million different languages and frameworks and things that you can learn. So it's impossible to know everything. But you just have to appreciate the knowledge that you do have and just understand like it's a journey. So that's what it is for me.
I think for me, it's more of a fear that the next thing is going to be too difficult for me to learn. You know, we're always having to learn everything, and our field moves at 1 billion miles an hour. So, you know, you can kind of like slag a little bit and stick to stuff, but you're going to get left behind pretty quick. So, like for example, came from core JavaScript background, and then jQuery came along, and I was like, oh hell yeah, I don't have to do query selector like this, that, and the other. I'm all about it, you know, and I did that, and you know, that's kind of fell out of favor in the last 5 or 6 years, and so came to Ray Ward, and we didn't write jQuery there. We kind of, you know, we're big on performance, and we try to eliminate as many dependencies as possible, and so I was like, oh shit, I gotta remember how to do that stuff that I put on my resume that I did, and oh man, that was like 8 years ago, you know, and so I had a little bit of imposter syndrome there that, you know, I knew how to do this stuff because I've written like crazy big routines and all kinds of methods and all kinds of stuff, and like, oh man, I haven't done that in so long, and I really like got paralyzed there for a little bit, like, oh man, I don't even know, like, how am I going to be able to do this again? We're just humans, and we can only like soak up so much knowledge and know so much stuff, and hey, if it takes me a little while longer to learn something, I'm just going to stick with it, and if you fail at it, you fail at it. Yeah.
That's great. Anyone else have a different take on imposter syndrome? Okay.
I will just note, it does not go away. 20 years in, it does not go away.
Yeah.
The paralyzing fear of, they're going to find out I don't know what I'm doing. As a consultant, I go into different clients every 6 months or year or 2 years or whatever. So every time I start a new project, whole new set of acronyms, whole new set of processes, whole new set of things I have to learn besides, you know, do I know the technology that we're using today? Am I learning it still? And so there's always that thing. So you have to come up with a mechanism to cope with that, right? Remember who you are. And there is no, I have to be as good as Terrence or better. I have to be as good as Josh or better. It's not about being better than one another. It's about being the best I can be. And what does that look like for me?
I think part of why this is a field that it's so prevalent in and it's so difficult to face is it's a very self-driven field and one in which you're learning all the time. And it's also, like I said, very varied, and there's a lot of different avenues. Like, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of different languages, frameworks represented in this room that people work with and do. And so you're constantly, I heard it said one time, you're constantly comparing your own broom closet to someone else's front room. And then, seriously, like you're comparing something that someone else has been deep into that, working on it, whatever, and you've just like tinkered around with it a little bit. And so you're like, oh, they're a genius. Whereas, no, they've just spent a lot more time in that than I have.
That's
And
a lot of the problem too, is that our field is, a lot of it's opinion. Like,
Yeah.
There's no right way.
Yeah, exactly. Like, one of the side jobs I had was working with the DOT and paving roads. There's only one way to pave a road. You can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna put half a strip here and another strip over here, it'll be cool. Yeah, it doesn't work like that. But here, like, you know, we can argue all day long about semantics and naming stuff. Oh my God, don't even get started on that. Yeah, exactly.
You get a war over tax.
So yeah, you kind of find sometimes, you know, you find a person that you respect a lot, and oh shit, they do 4 space tabs and I'm 2 space. You know, like, am I doing something wrong here? Am I the imposter? You're not at all. You know, it's just we're in a very unique field.
Let's solve that problem.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, the answer is spaces.
Yeah.
2 spaces. 2 spaces. Yeah, this is all.
Efficiency. Just say it.
It's all right. Safe space. Right.
Starts getting contentious.
Okay. So there, I just had one. Are there any specific scenarios that trigger you more than others when it comes to imposter syndrome?
Oh, I would say Twitter. Like, so as an ops person, so I follow a number of people, and I think there's a guy that writes a newsletter that is just about AWS, and it sums up like what happened in AWS this week. And he came to the most recent DevOps conference here in Charlotte, and his whole topic was on the idea of celebrity ops people, which is just the funniest thing to think. As it's an oxymoron, because we're myself notwithstanding, the bearded guys in the closet that like you're just not paying attention
That
to.
everyone takes for granted.
Right, but I think it spreads off to the whole industry. When you like open Twitter and you see a TechCrunch article or some tech article and someone's doing this thing that it's like, here's the thing that everybody's doing. And like, shit, we have so much technical debt that we're like probably 6 months from even thinking about how to implement that. So yeah, Twitter is definitely my triggering point. But so the remembering thing is to go like, they have a very small domain, or it's sort of like remembering of the difference between, especially for a startup, your job is to get revenue. Getting revenue and growing the revenue with an eye on your technical debt. And it's sort of like any just thing, just it's there, and you just whittle it away through every little sprint, rather than thinking like, okay, we're doing nothing else, but we're just going to work on our technical debt. And just be aware of it, you pay attention to it, and when it comes up, if it's impacting decisions, structure is like, is this a small decision that we're knowingly going to pay this off later, or do we not know enough about the problem we're trying to solve for our customers yet that we're going to put it implement in a way that solves our customer's problem, and as we get down the road with a couple more customers who have this particular problem, maybe that will inform our thinking of what is the correct architecture. So we're just kind of build something for now. And because sometimes you think about, like, especially as a developer, it's like, oh, this isn't this pristine architecture. It's like, because we don't know what we need yet. A customer of one is not someone you build an architecture on. Maybe a customer of a couple thousand, that's when you kind of decide, okay, here's what we need to do. So yeah, Twitter's always my triggering thing. Open something, somebody's doing something, or something that I'm thinking about implementing, and then like a week later, AWS says, hey, it's a whole new service already.
I have this love-hate relationship with standards. It's like, I want everything to be standardized, and I'm in a team now where standards is very big, and I've been in positions where I'm the only guy that makes the decision about like how I sort my selectors, or do I want to put an opening bracket on this line or move it down to another line, and that's just, I struggle in that sometimes, so I get triggered a little bit in that. I'm salty and old, and been doing this a long time, and how dare you tell me to do it this way when do it this other way, and I guess that's the right way to do it, I don't know. You guys get triggered from stuff like that?
I think for me, like a lot of my imposter syndrome, this has been a really big personal struggle for me, as I've kind of hinted to already. But I think my motivation and my triggers are really closely aligned, because like my motivation is I want to be as valuable as I can be to my clients, right? I want to like be a valuable resource. That became kind of a trigger in and of itself, because that's defining me as a person, as value. It's like that was what I was pulling my individual self-worth from, right? And I think some of the things that can trigger a lot of those issues is like feedback, right, from clients, or constructive criticism. This is, I think, something that a lot of like young creatives struggle with. I think it's something that young developers struggle with. It's every time someone gives you a critique, it becomes a commentary on who you are as an individual. And you internalize that, and it stews, and it creates this really toxic, bad thing inside of you. And I think shifting, like when you guys are in the industry and you're looking at architecture and you're like, hey, I'm walking into this knowing it's not going to be perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. You guys are approaching things as solutions, right? Or tools that are helping you get there. And that was a really big shift for me that was really hard, but extremely useful. It was like, no, this is not me as an individual because I'm capable of creating millions of solutions. This is one solution that I've created. And if it doesn't work, let's find another one,
Triggers.
Hashtag triggers.
Let me count the ways. For me, I think it's several different things. Let's see. I definitely agree with Twitter, podcasts, speaker conferences, pair programming. Let's see. Yes, I think for me, like specifically with pair programming or just programming period with other developers.
I mean, that other person could just be an asshole.
Very possible.
It's like it kind of goes to the root of it. Like imposter syndrome is just having that feeling of, man, am I really good enough? And having someone like right next to you, looking over your shoulder while you're coding, you're worried about that opinion that they may have, whatever opinion it may be on your code or your code style, and you don't want to hear that feedback. And then it's like, all right, Terrence, man, that's actually really good. I didn't think of that. You're like. Like, man, I live to find another day. I live to find another day. But there's just so many things that kind of just come back to just kind of cut you sometimes and make you think, do I really deserve to be here? Should I really be a developer? Like going back to the whole podcast or listening to speaker conferences and stuff like that. I'll sit there and listen to like a Dan Abramov speech or presentation. He's a really famous JavaScript developer, develop Redux and stuff like that. And the guy's wicked smart, and you can sit there and listen to him and just be like, how long did it take him to just like get to that point? And then you kind of compare it to where you are and just be like, will you ever get to that level? And I think, I listen to like Wes Boss, a person who came up with like the JavaScript 30 challenge, and
Which is awesome, by the way.
Teaches really great courses on JavaScript related content, and it just really amazes me to be like, wow, like he really knows this to the core. And will I ever get to that level? Am I at that level? Like, and it just.
And how do you know when you get there? Like,
exactly.
like there's no metric. You can't measure it unless it's feedback from someone else, which, depending on feedback from someone else, also puts you back into that cycle.
Right. So it's a vicious cycle. That's what it is. But at the same time, like I said, you got to take that step back, realize where you are, realize that like the knowledge that you do have is valuable, and like I said before, it's just a journey. Like you're eventually getting to the point that you want to, the point to where you want to be, but you've got to put in that work and grind. So that's what I try to remember. I look at those as motivation, those people as motivation to work even harder. And it's like it's no time to sleep when there's other people out there who's working harder than you. So that's how I approach things.
That's great. How many of you are like type half as fast as soon as somebody walks up on you?
I go an extra finger.
You make all the typos, and you're like,
I type faster, but there's a lot more backspace.
Most of the things you do are
The
backspace.
other day I had to search for, where's the fucking colon?
Yeah. How do you spell fork?
He's like, no, just put a colon. And I'm like, where's it at? Oh, there it is. Oh, yeah, I knew it was.
Or you
Yeah,
put your
totally.
hands just offset.
I was thinking
Yeah.
the same thing. Yeah.
Nope,
Yeah.
that's not.
That's me on the command line.
So for me, I had a real feeling of imposter syndrome. It was like probably day 5 at Skookum. And it was actually Alan triggered me. I don't know if you remember this. Very first code I committed, very first line of code I committed, I put the curly brace on the wrong line, and I broke the code differently than they broke the code. Like break it at a different line than they break it at. And Alan's first comment back was, "That's not the way we write it. We do it like this." And it was constructive criticism. It was exactly what he should have been doing to tell me to do that. And at that moment, I was like, "Oh shit! I do not need to be here. Like I just need to get up and walk out right now. Line 1 was wrong."
It's funny that you mention it because I was going to say that overviews trigger my imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
especially when people ask me to review the code, because I want to be like, I feel like, that situation.
Right.
It's hard. I mean, it was hard for me to give you that feedback because you have more experience than I do. But then, like, I was reviewed and I knew what was wrong, so it was like that triggered my imposter syndrome, which is yours.
We just need to get in a
What
room
a
before we
mess.
start. Just get in a room before you start and everybody hold hands.
Yeah.
We're all good enough. We can do this.
That's the
Yeah.
reality, right?
Yeah.
Like, we stress ourselves out and bring on all this anxiety because, like, am I going to be as good as Victoria? Am I as good as Josh? Be you. Be as good as you. Don't compare yourselves to other people. And I say that knowing that that is way harder to actually internalize and act on. Because that's what I'm working on personally, is I still struggle with this. And every time I start a new project or switch technologies or get in a room with another developer who I have to review code with or talk through an architecture, like, man, they're going to find out I don't know what I'm doing. And I have people tell me, we've been doing this 20 years. How does that all go out the door when you walk into a room with another engineer? It doesn't. The reality is I've set up this false measurement that is never achievable. You can never be as good as somebody else because what does that mean? So stop measuring yourself that way. And that's, again, harder to actually do, but that's where I take my line of thinking when I get triggered, when I go into the scenarios of, okay, right, I'm not competing against this other person. I don't have to be this other person, therefore I don't have to be as good as this other person. And so just be you. And if constructive feedback, then you can detach yourself from that code because it will change. And you are not your code. You are not this engineer thing that you created that you should be. One of the things I learned early on in my career, and I wrote it on a post-it note because it became very, very important. You are not your code. Code is fluid. It will always change. Do not get attached to your code. I think that was a great point, Victoria. It will change. You'll look back on it in 6 months and be like, what the hell was I thinking? and it will change, right?
Maybe even 3 days.
Which is one of the points that when I was teaching for Tech Talent South and I was starting to introduce people to the concept of Git, is when you commit in code to Git or whatever the repository is, not only is your code, but your comments are love notes to your future self. It is a way of expressing love to your future self because you will look at this code in 6 months and not know what this is about. So you want to write to yourself 6 months into the future when you come back and look at this future and go, I don't know why this does what it does. Comments.
So let's flip it a little bit. What's your superhero moment? What's the thing that happens for you that makes you think, I'm not an imposter. I'm supposed to be here, and I'm the right person for this job. Start with you.
Me?
Yeah.
When I sit one-on-one with people that have less experience than I do, and I feel that what they tell me that I've added value to their life, like that's what I feel like. I mean, that's what gives me fulfillment and keeps me going pretty much. I think that's a one.
Great.
Anyone else find happiness when seeing a client's just expression when they've waited on this thing for 6 months, they've been staring at this PSD or sketch mock-up and oh my God, it's actually real. Like it looks like the sketch mock-up that you guys gave me and oh my God, it works the way that I wanted it to. And oh, you did this other thing over here, that's awesome, it's super cool. And you're like, oh my God, I actually did that. Like I built that thing and it works the way that I want you to. And then another thing was, for me, we've just started recently doing pretty regular code reviews at Ray Ward, and one of the other developers called a huge method that I'd written, had the happy pattern and everything, escaped early. It's fucking beautiful, man. And I was like, yes, oh my God, this guy's like such a top level programmer, and he was like, dude, your stuff's good, so shit, I'm actually good. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a couple of those moments in my career where it was like getting feedback from somebody that I respected, and see it happened just yesterday. I was talking to somebody, we were interviewing for a management position, and he gave me this feedback and said he really respected me and all of this stuff, and I'm sitting there like, Really? Do you think that about me? Because I think that about you, and just for that to be a reality, that somebody else respects me and has that vision of me, like, oh, I mean, maybe I do know what I'm doing. Yes, I totally know what I'm doing, and this is like total superhero moment, and I felt that a couple of times in my career where I got that feedback from somebody. So to that end, I try to make sure I give that feedback to people. And that's why she's awesome. you gotta prove it, right? But that's the other side of that is to reciprocate that feedback when you see it. When you see somebody doing something really great, telling them is a great way to help encourage them.
It's one of the natural things we need as humans is validation of our efforts.
And I think
making a difference.
meaningful validation.
Yeah.
Like when somebody is so genuine about it, and it's that moment of like you see how much you hit that home run, and you see the impact it had on someone else. Like that for me are my superhero moments. Like I love doing the consulting side of it because I come in and a lot of times I work with people who are not tech savvy at all, and I'm not an expert, but I'm more of an expert than they are. And I don't have to necessarily be 20 years of experience in coding to be able to help them solve a problem that they have. And so I walk in and I listen and I translate whatever they're saying in their language to something that is more technical, and then come back with a solution. And that moment of like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Why didn't I do this like a year ago? That's the thing that we live for, right? Like you said, the value that you bring.
Celebrate all wins, small or large. Whenever I see Webpack compile, or whenever I see the color green on my terminal, I'm Tiger Woods fist pumping, happy because it's working, and it's continued validation that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But just taking it a step further, something that I'm really appreciative of at my new job working at Union is that we have code reviews very often, and you have your code reviews with a senior dev and a technical director, and you got to walk through your code. They want to see like what you've been working on, see how you explain it, and like I feel like it's been such a valuable experience for me because I can go there. It's one thing to write the code, it's a whole other thing to actually explain it and explain why you're doing something the way that you're doing it. And to get that validation from like my technical director and my senior dev saying like, wow, like this is actually really good code. We want to refactor some of our existing code on in our code base to kind of utilize some of these patterns that you're using. Like that, it's a good feeling to have because not only are you writing good code, but you're also making a big impact for your team. And it's a nice little win to have. It's a nice feeling to have. So celebrate all wins, small or large. Something else that I do, I make sure to write things in Evernote. Like whenever I'm getting a compliment or something from like another developer or someone on the accounts team, I write it down because when you're having those moments where you don't feel like you're doing the best, it's good to have that validation. Like you got the proof right there, and you can just continue to remind yourself. And that's something that I did not only as a developer, as a marketer. So it's something that kind of transferred over. I try to write.
It's a really good tactic for interviews too.
Try to write down any sort of wins that I've had, any compliments that I've gotten, any sort of emails that I've received, and I go back and read them, and it just like further cement that validation and give you, that boost that you need when you're feeling down at times. So
if you ever get like an email shout out that like says your name in it, and it's like so and so did this awesome thing, like blah blah, print that out, put it in a file, take those things to interviews with you, FYI, because like those things are like proof, social proof that says, look how I contributed at my old job. Even if it's not necessarily development, again, like kudos are those things that you want to keep track of for your own mental health. I think it's all important for us. But then also, like, it can be a tool for you that, again, that's social proof.
So as a career question, should I bring in, when I go to my next interview, should I bring an interview for my kindergarten teacher that says I'm good at naps?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I wouldn't hire you.
So with ops, it's a little different. It's because, basically if you're doing your job, if all the servers and everything is running, and only when there's a fire do people realize there is a person whose job it is to do that. And that's part of like when we talk about what is imposter syndrome, I had a very strong affinity for perfectionism. Just onto myself and something that I put onto other people. I was a real asshole to work with previously.
There's still are.
Huh? He's only known me a couple weeks, so. But yeah, so the idea of ops is like, things are either running or it's not. And I think that's one of the things I find really beautiful about working in tech is like you cannot BS your way through it. Like it either works or it doesn't. The compiler does not give you partial credit. And I think sometimes like it's just nice to know like it works. It compiled. It did the thing that you wanted it to do. And it's not just sort of like, oh yeah, that's fine. Whatever. So where that kind of goes into the question at hand is that the problem with ops is that it can lead to situations where you feel like you have to be in firefighting hero mode in order to get that feedback of like, yeah, you saved the day. But if you keep living in that state of your systems just either going down or people running to you like, can you come do this thing? 5 o'clock release. Don't ever do a 5 o'clock release on a Friday. Wait till 3. But still, that is a terrible place to live because that leads to burnout, and that was the place that I got to. So I ended up taking like a year off of my job and just like lived like a hermit and didn't go out and do a lot of fun. It led me to a lot of internal soul searching of whether I wanted to stay in tech. And,
I've so been there.
yeah.
Same thing.
And eventually, teaching was really kind of part of the way of how I found my love back to it. But you want to not be in that place where the only thing that you find rewarding is that hero mode. So where, as an ops person, that I find a lot of my value is the documentation I write for my developers. So because I really feel like what I enjoy is pushing that whole team forward. And the things that I do to make their lives easier makes the company better and makes my options more worthwhile. So those are the things that I want to focus on is making the team better. So when someone like sends me a Slack of, hey Scott, how do I do X, Y? I'm like, I have already written you that documentation. Here's it all step by step. You can just follow it right through. Sorry, I haven't written the script to actually do automated all of it first, but it's already done. Here's the, like when we onboard Alan and bring him on, I'm like, oh, here's the Confluence page you need that's already got an export for pre-filled in the database connection file. So you just grab this file, download it, throw in your credentials that I already slacked you, and then away you go to get hooked up. So
Can I just say that I wish you worked at every company I've ever been at? Oh my god.
Well, those are the lessons you learn from like pain.
Yeah. The organization is so
it's key.
Yeah.
So, like, I apologize to Dimitri, who's not here, but he's my new coworker. He's my new lab rat. So everything new. Like, as soon as you come on board, you're my new lab rat, and I just try everything new on you, which makes it easier for Alan. So Alan appreciates it, but Dimitri was my lab rat. So so it's just kind of always having that process of, and that's kind of what that DevOps movement is from, is to move you from living in firefighting mode to focus more on quality of life and building things over time.
Scalability.
I think he totally hit the nail on the head on that, on pushing the team forward. Like that, to me, on the very junior end of things, I also tear up a bit of Confluence. In fact, they've recently started calling it POTS Fluence. My last name's POTS. And on a particular project we're on. But in general, I very much felt from day one, like I said, I started last November, so been there about 6 months, I can't even pretend to be as smart as some of these people or to have as much, people that have been working at this place in this code base for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever, there's no way I'm going to catch up. But what I can do is focus on specific areas and find ways that I can contribute to the team. And in doing so, and as opposed to me trying to make it about me and me being good enough, saying what can I do to help our team succeed, that kind of cures my imposter syndrome.
Yep.
And I mean, I think it's a good attitude to have in general, but also makes it so I can contribute and dive into areas that maybe some of our seniors don't have the time for, or for whatever reason. And because of taking that approach, I've gotten to work on some pretty interesting projects that I might not have otherwise gotten to, just because I've said, hey, I'll check that out, I'll look into it, and it really is a good cure for imposter syndrome, because it lets you just go and make valuable contributions. Because ultimately, we all want to do something valuable for the people we're working with, right? Like, we want to contribute, we want to know that we're making a difference. And so I think just finding those ways, whatever level you're at, like I said, for me, very junior, but is a big superhero moment.
I think it's important to remember that in our profession that we will make mistakes. Officer for the startup that I helped found, one day I updated every single user in our system to have the exact same credentials in production. Yeah. So update statement, update statement, forgot the whereabouts. Yeah. It was good. And we had a backup process. It took me about 10 minutes to recover after the 10 minutes where I considered packing everything up into a box and walking out of the building. Yeah. So let's share. What's the dumbest thing you've ever done?
Everybody else go first. I think I can beat you.
So 1 week before you joined SchoolCom as my manager, I had another manager at the company. He's not here, but there was this potential customer for SchoolCom, and it was my job to review their code so that we can give an accurate work estimate. And when I pulled their code, I ran all the migrations against their production database. Basically what I did is their live app that had customers, paying customers, it was completely wiped out of existence for about 4 hours, and it was all my fault. So I considered this is and then again, it was a potential customer, it was not an actual customer.
Did we get that customer?
No. you can ask Joe.
I would blame that one for giving the credits to the production database.
Well, to my defense, the production database credentials were hard-coded into the Git repository. It was public? No.
Git now fixes that for you now.
Yeah. I fixed a problem on a client's staging website while my boss was training the customer on the CMS, and totally wiped out their account, all the changes they had done to all the stuff, and I was like, hey, I fixed that thing. And they were like, oh, you erased the user, and now they're gonna, and I was like, oh. And then Brad was working with me at the time, and it was Eric. I think it was Eric, correct? Developer guy, yes, and he was like, bad day? I was like, yeah, we all have them, it happens. They recovered, we kept the customer. Yeah.
This makes me think of all these stories. Does anybody remember the AWS outage last year?
Yes.
Okay. There was one guy who was doing a live presentation of the software, and it just completely went out as he's on stage in front of hundreds and hundreds of people. We've all, so it happens.
It sucks to be that AWS engineer. Can you imagine?
Right. I was in IT staff, and we were like, we should just go downstairs. They were below us. We were like, we should just go hand out business cards. It was literally one floor below us that the whole outage happened.
Anyone else have something to share?
Mine was actually when I was working help desk. At least the one that sticks the most, that I'm still like, oh. I was working on help desk, and I was going in and deleting a mailbox for somebody who left the company. And for some reason, I deleted the executive assistant's mailbox instead. So VP, owners of the company, she ran all of their calendars and coordinated all of their emails and things. And I hit yes to confirm to delete her mailbox. And when they went to go get the backups were not working. She lost 9 months worth of emails. And internet, yeah, I was like, I'm screwed. This is the end of my IT career. It hasn't even begun. But they were like, yeah, that sucks. Not good. And I think I beat myself up over it so much. They were like, okay, well, fix it. Okay. Yeah, so that was good. Like, I still am like, oh, this is a wonderful moment. And, yeah, and that was 2002, maybe. So like 16 years later, I'm still.
But that stuff happens a lot. Like I accidentally got fired from like this job on repeated occasions because they would set like timelines for your stuff to expire, and apparently like forgot to make me an exception.
I wasn't supposed to be deleting your
Yeah.
mailbox.
So I've had similar things happen.
So in my bio for this event, I alluded to starting a zombie outbreak.
Yeah.
This is the story. So at the time, I worked at UNC Charlotte, and I built most of the web infrastructure for UNC Charlotte. So it started off as being 90% Windows hosted, and by the time I left, it was 98% Linux. And in that process, in that period, was the Virginia Tech shooting. So our chancellor at the time came to, and I worked in central IT, and they came to, and they're like, how prepared are we for this? And so I got the question of like, how much load traffic could our website handle if we had such an incident that happened? Because that's what happened. Is when the shooting happened, everybody hit the the Virginia Tech website and took it down. And at this time, like any great university, we had absolutely no scalability, no backup infrastructure, whatever. And I'm like, here's the cost estimate for us to even do that test. So we ended up buying some third-party partner, and so as part of the web team, I got trained on this system that was basically a JavaScript include that was a switch that we could flip on their website that would, if we had an alert banner that needed to be put out, it was on a caching system, whatever. What do you call this? CDN. It was on a CDN, so it would have been shoved in. So like somehow our whole website would have been crushed, but this little JavaScript ran over. I don't know. It wasn't me to sign the check, but I got sent off to this training. And the training was in the office, and we were to just write these little emails and figure out, and they were just supposed to go in the training room. I had recently learned the founder of the university was buried on campus at UNC Charlotte. And so, having just seen that guy that wrote the movie Hot Fuzz in his zombie film, I had kind of zombies on the brain. So and it was like, right, so we're going through like the training manual, and it's like, your job is to go here and write a alert email. So I wrote an email about like, or maybe the movie 30 Days, where they conceive of zombies being like from a bacteria, whatever, 28 days to come out or something. So I wrote this email basically suggesting a zombie outbreak had happened on campus, and Bonnie Cone was roaming the campus. The training coordinator was misinformed when he told me that the email just went within our office, like within our training room. It was in fact slightly live. This email went to the chancellor and some of the vice chancellors on campus, some of whom had known Bonnie Cone personally.